Stilettos and broken bottles.
That doesn't seem like a healthy diet.
I'm Lamont, and I'm a bread person.
And I'm Leah. I'm a rice person.
And
And
you're
you're tuning
tuning into
into
the
the Lamont
Lamont
and
and
Leah
Leah
podcast.
podcast. All right, Leah. So today we have two guests coming on to talk about a topic that you were very interested and passionate about.
Yes, I'm both excited because, well, first off, we're talking about food. So I'm excited because I love food.
I love food too.
But I'm a little uneasy because, as much as I love food, it's kind of an anxious topic for me. Food and nutrition is like such a large like umbrella of topics that I hope that one day we can like delve into like a lot more of them uh, on our podcast. But today we're going to hone in on the subject of emotional eating and binge eating.
Which, Leah, if I'm honest, that's something I have definitely dealt with and struggled with in the past.
Oh yeah,
And
definitely.
probably
Me too.
still deal with.
Yeah,
So
for sure. Me too.
so there might be a lot of truth revealed in this episode.
hmm So let's go grab our guests and let's get started.
Welcome, Leslie, and welcome, Stephenie. We are so glad that you guys could join us on our podcast today.
Well, thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. Why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves to our viewer and listener audience? Leslie, why don't you go first? And then Stephenie, why don't you go right after?
Awesome. Yes. So I'm Leslie. I'm a registered dietitian and a personal trainer. And I work with committed individuals who want to remove emotional eating tethers, destroy their disease inducing patterns, lose some weight. And as I like to say, make it through life with the margarita in hand and the body that they want without any of the shame or guilt.
I love that.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm Stephenie Farrell, and it's my passion to help women focus less on feeling bad about their bodies and more time spent on the things they love. I'm an intuitive eating, trauma-sensitive intuitive eating counselor, body confidence coach, and energy therapist. So I use mind, body, and brain techniques to help women with, my focus is more binge and emotional eating. So
Excellent. So I'm excited about this conversation. Like I was sharing with Leah a little bit earlier, this is something I've kind of struggled with in my life, like binge eating, emotional eating. I feel like I have a pretty good handle, but I'm pretty sure I slip into old habits. So, and I'm pretty sure other people struggle with this out there. So we definitely want to help people, get them information and ways to just improve.
Yeah. Okay, so before we kind of like dive into today's subject, which I think we wanted to focus more on like emotional eating and binge eating, I feel like we need to like set a foundation for anyone who's listening or watching that may not know a lot about like today's topic. Specifically people's relationship with food, like having a relationship with food, good or bad. I feel like not a lot of people have heard that term before. It's something I actually just heard about like maybe a few years ago. So I'm wondering if you guys could maybe put in words what that means, like what a relationship with food is.
mhm. Well, I believe we have a relationship to everything in our lives. So, I mean, we have a relationship to work, right? We
Hmm.
also have a relationship to food, and it's really our thoughts, emotions, behaviors that you know, in relation to food, that determine that relationship, whether it's good or bad.
hmm
Agreed. I would also say that I think that we form emotions tied to those foods when we're young.
hmm
There's a lot of that goes into that. Just a personal story here about myself. When I was in officer development school, when I joined the Navy, I'd never been away from my mom for 5 weeks. I know I was 24 years old, and that sounds ridiculous, but I did get homesick and I missed her drastically. And in the start of the fourth week, I was ridiculously like, I just want a hug from my mom. And I knew I couldn't get one. I did get to talk to her on the phone, which was something that wasn't typically allowed. But from there, what wound up happening was for the next 3 days, all I wanted was chocolate. And I couldn't get it. I physically couldn't. We were restricted. We weren't allowed caffeine, chocolate, any of those things. And for the longest time, I was like, this is all I want. But I couldn't get it. And because I physically couldn't put it in my mouth, that's when I realized that I had this emotion tied there, because when we would be sad, when we were little, chocolate or ice cream or some sort of sweet came into play. And so that's something that I think that's important. Yes, I totally agree with what Stephenie said. Like, relationship with food is just like a relationship with a person, but the thought process is you developed it when you were little, before you even processed that you were actually having that relationship.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, as a child, sometimes depending on our upbringing, depending on our home situation, etc. I can say from my personal experience that there were things that I didn't feel like I got either. I didn't feel like I had that love or that support or that caring that I needed from my parents, and there were lots of traumatic things going on actually around me. And so for me, food actually meant comfort. It meant love. It meant safety. Safety is a really huge issue. So yeah, that's part of that emotional relationship too, to food, that we use it for those reasons, right?
Right.
It can be for that reason too, but I've also worked with a lot of women who I find like it's a generational thing. So women carry these like food beliefs about food and their body, right? Through generations. So our mothers carry those wounds as well, and then they pass them on to their daughters and to their sons as well. But they pass them on, and a lot of women have come to me to break that pattern, right? Because they have small children and they really want to set a good example. So
yeah, I thought it was interesting when I was looking into this topic about like how much is influenced about like from your parents or whoever like you're around when you're growing up. Like my mom doesn't like spicy food. It makes her sick. And so like I grew up thinking like, oh, I don't like spicy food. So when I started adding like more spicy food to my diet, my mom was really worried, and she's like, no, you can't eat it. You can't eat spicy food. I was like, no, I definitely can. And it's great. I love it.
Yeah. So it's one of those things, right?
Yeah.
Now that you shared that, Leah, I'm thinking of times with my mom. Like, there was things I thought was yucky or gross, but she liked them. So I was like, if she likes them, I have to like them too. Like, I want what she wants, right? And so, like, even though I really didn't like tapioca pudding, like, I tried it. I'm like, I like tapioca pudding because my mom likes tapioca pudding. And I hate peas because my mom hates peas, even though actually I kind of liked peas. So, like, that's interesting for sure.
I just wanted to mention too, I don't know, in terms of emotional eating, like it gets a really bad rap, but emotional eating makes sense if you think of it. If you think of celebrations, like Thanksgiving's coming up, right? So we're thinking of like celebrations and getting together with family or weddings or birthday parties. And we all come around and gather around food, and it's delicious, and it's a way we relate to each other. Even if you think of like, I'm sure you've seen those shows where the girl breaks up with her boyfriend and she goes to the fridge and she's opening the freezer and she gets that carton of ice cream, right? And she's got a big spoon. And that's fine. I mean, food is meant to be comforting. It's meant to be delicious, and it's fine. But when it becomes like a habitual response to or a cover for our emotions or a coping mechanism, a habitual coping mechanism, it can really wreak havoc with people's lives.
Yeah.
So
There's a lot of situations that happen while we're growing up that can alter our relationship and the way we feel about food, and we don't even realize them. Like for me personally, I'm one of those people that I was told you got to finish your whole plate, and so now
Yes.
I can't leave the table unless my food is gone. Like even if I'm really full. So like, what are some other unhealthy relationships that people might have with food that they may or may not realize is, unhealthy?
Um, well, I was skipping meals, not making time to eat, actually cutting out whole food groups. This is kind of a disordered type of eating situation. Maybe focusing a lot of their attention on like chopping and preparing and those sorts of things. So
Mhm.
yeah.
I would also say like chronic dieting, one diet to the next diet to the, okay, I'm off or I'm on, or I'm going to be really perfect this week, or that sort of relationship, where it's like, if I'm not restricting, I'm not that way. And you could even
Mhm.
tie in exercise, like, okay, I did bad, but it's okay. I will kill myself for like 3 or 4 hours at the gym.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'd say the majority of my clients tend to act like that, where they could rattle off 20 diets that they've been on in the past 5 or 6 years,
Yeah.
or 20 times where they said they'd start again on Monday,
Mhm.
or something along those lines. Or where it's that punishment, it's the punishment to food. I'll eat the cookie, but, and then they tell themselves something they have to do. I find that a lot of the clients that I see have a guilt and shame thing. It's like
Mhm.
they feel bad for consuming the food, so they guilt themselves, so they force themselves to do X activity to make themselves feel better, but then they go and perform the same activity again. It's this guilt and shame cycle that they put themselves on. And that's really the big things that I've seen, like relationship wise with food, that we may not even know, just our
Yeah.
pattern around food, like how we do the things that we do, how we eat the way we eat. And it's like, I'll be perfect in January and February because I can be, but then March comes and it's like spring break, and then summer, oh, forget it. And then come the winter time, it's like, oh, but it's Thanksgiving and it's Christmas or
Yeah.
whatever holidays you celebrate. And it's like, I'll start again next year. Right. And it's that cycle. And it's almost like you have a relationship to food and your behavior based on the time of year, or like Stephenie was saying,
Mhm.
based on a relationship or that kind of thing. And it's very like, if you went back and watched some of the things that you've done in the past few years, you'd almost see the same cycle. And even sometimes, like if you broke up with the boyfriend or broke up with your husband, you may still keep that same cycle of the way you ate or did things like that, just because your brain sometimes mentally connects it to just like the time of year. So
Mhm. Right.
It's also that all or none thinking, like all or nothing thinking, like, oh, well, I ate one brownie, so why don't I just eat the whole pan, right? It's that sort of black and white, like all or nothing
Yeah.
thinking that goes into it too. That's another relationship that we have in terms of like moralizing foods as good or bad. Really bad. I ate a brownie, so why don't I just eat the whole pan? So yeah, I totally agree with that. Mhm.
Yeah. I recognize all those things with myself.
Yeah. Leia, literally, I feel like I'm being dragged. They're like, I see you. Oh my God. No, these are all ideas and relationships that I have had with food. And I think at this time in my life where I'm exercising more, but saying, like, it's okay to eat this, don't worry about it. The main thing is, like, make sure you're getting your nutrition in there, make sure you're staying active, and everything else is gonna fall into place. Like, it's not about like trying to like look a certain way anymore. It's not trying to like do that. It's just like staying healthy or trying to stay healthy.
Mhm.
Yeah, nourishing yourself with food instead of using it to cope with stress, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing that I'm hearing is one way to stop some of these negative relationships with food is to be aware or become aware of your relationship with the food or patterns that you developed over time. Like, that's the starting point, is become aware.
Mhm.
Would you guys say that's fair?
Yeah, I think awareness is key, and then finding a way to break those patterns. So the tools that I use in terms of the mind body energy therapy tools are somatic tools, so body up, based tools that help to break those patterns, but also create new neural pathways so that we're creating healthier patterns. Yeah. But definitely awareness. If we're not aware, we can't really change anything.
Yeah. I feel that that might be one of the harder parts. Like, just first of all, even recognizing, because okay, so when I was looking up stuff for this topic, I found a few lists and videos and stuff, and they were talking about like things that are unhealthy, like relationship wise with food, and I was like, oh damn. So like half this list is me, and I didn't even realize it. One of the ones that stood out to me was having like good food versus bad food, like demonizing certain food. I'm very guilty of that.
Yeah, moralizing foods. I know. I was there with you. Yeah, moralizing certain foods. So it's interesting, how we do that, and it's kind of interesting how I deal with that with my clients, because we do a lot of sometimes we do a lot of sessions on like mindful eating. And those foods that are like those forbidden foods, or those foods that are bad foods, sometimes they'll try them with me or online like this, and they have a whatever it is, a cookie or a potato chip. One of my clients used potato chips and chocolate, so she tasted it very mindfully, tasting it and smelling it and really taking her time with it. And she's like, you know what? I don't really even like this. So it's funny how we get in our minds like, this is a bad food.
Yeah.
But food is really equal. And I think, we can call them not bad foods, but like play foods, right?
Yeah.
We can have play foods. It's okay.
I think for Leah and myself, we grew up in the Seventh-day Adventist church, and so there's this culture of labelizing food as good and bad. Like, I don't know about you, Leah, I still don't eat pork or pepperoni.
Yeah, me either.
Or stuff like that, because we were told like that is unclean, that is not for you, and I still follow a lot of those like dietary restrictions, but like I may not be like super like kosher or whatever. Like if the pizza had pepperoni on it, I may pick it off because like that like. But I'll also eat the pizza, even though like the juice is totally all over it. So.
Yeah, I do that too.
We're bad Adventists.
Okay, so I think we kind of like accidentally got onto the topic when I was just trying to like define what like a food relationship was. So I just want to backtrack just a little bit.
Okay.
And kind of like define what emotional eating is and then what binge eating is, in case people don't really know what those two things are. So let's start with emotional eating. So like, what is it? What is it?
Well, I think it's emotional eating. Like I said, it's not always bad, right? It's sometimes celebration. Sometimes, we do eat emotionally, and that's fine. But like I said, it can be a habitual response for us sometimes to reach for food in order to stuff our emotions, eat our emotions, cope with our emotions, or maybe even when we're triggered by something that has happened, we're not even aware of that, but we're just reaching for food as a way to, to soothe ourselves. It's kind of a self-soothing mechanism.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. Whereas binge eating is for me, it's a little bit different. And there's, about 4 or 5 reasons why people binge eat. So binge eating is characterized by eating a larger than normal amount of food in a short period of time, but that kind of varies from person to person. So what's a binge for one person may not be for another person, depending on their thoughts about food, their relationship with food. But one aspect of that is really not eating enough. So not nourishing yourself enough with food, not just simply biological hunger, right? And you get so hungry because you're not eating enough that you know, your body thinks it's starving, so it wants to get the food in there. Another reason could be lack of or not doing a lot of self-care. So like, is a person sleeping enough? Is a person looking after their I mean, are they skipping meals? Are they like going through the workday without eating? That sort of thing. And then there's the rigid food rules again. So that's that like all or nothing thinking, like, oh, okay, well, you know, it's bad. I ate one brownie. I'm just gonna like get face deep in the whole pan, right? And eat the whole pan. And then, you know, the last aspect of the binge eating, really another reason why people binge eat is because of their emotions, because they aren't able to cope with them, or, you know, that's one of their methods for coping with their emotions or triggers. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would agree with both of those definitions for sure. I think the only thing I would add potentially would be to, you know, emotional eating. Agreed that a lot of times it's relationship, but it's also like that attachment that you potentially got, you know, with just a food for the right season or the right reason. You know, the food is attached to some sort of emotion. And if you don't want to feel that emotion or you want to avoid that emotion, that will typically sometimes happen.
I've recently just been doing some research into ADHD, and I just saw something that was very interesting to me. Related to our topic, and that is the dopamine spike that you receive when you eat when you're not hungry, but you're just looking for something. And I saw that there were a lot of people saying that that's very common with people with ADHD, that they eat when they're not hungry. They just they don't realize it, but like it makes them happy, so they just snack all the time, constantly, so that they can get that dopamine spike. Because I guess ADHD has lower levels of dopamine. Just that reminded me of it. Sorry.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to bring up a question. What chemicals are being released in the brain when we eat? So dopamine, it sounds like dopamine is being released when we eat. Is there anything else that's being released when we eat? A pleasure chemical?
Well, certainly pleasure chemicals. Yeah, there are other things that are released when we eat, but not related to that kind of, and I think, yeah, you know, I saw a few years ago too that those pleasure chemicals are related to binge eating. And on the other side of it too, when you're looking at like, I know you had mentioned the guilt and the shame aspect of eating. And I think that, you know, on the other side of that, there's the cortisol release, right? Which is highly detrimental to your health. Like being in chronic stress is basically what that is. And and again, with the dieting up and down too, is very stressful on the body. So people have to understand that as well. I'm not sure. I think I got off topic there.
No. That's fine.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I would agree. Like, it's hard to say exactly which hormones in my mind, because it depends on what the action is that you're going for in your brain, right? So obviously, like, you know, scrolling your phone now, you can get the dopamine. On a totally different note, though, with like the shame and the guilt cycle, I think that comes in less with like trying to get some sort of emotional, like brain chemical to work, and more of just you continuing the pattern that you always do. That's linked to whatever reason. I cause myself to chronically diet because I've always been unworthy in my life, because I've always felt bad about myself, because I don't have self-esteem, and because this is how I get my self-esteem, or whatever that may be. So sometimes I believe that it goes to, you're giving yourself a feel-good hormone because you're in your safety patterns. And that's sort of what
childhood wounds, right? I mean, I grew up with this feeling of being unworthy, uncared for, unloved, that kind of childhood wound that, that brought me to the food, brought me to my disordered eating and eating disorders. So whether it was restriction or binge eating or bulimia or whatever it was for me, because I've run the gamut really in my life, and all of that was rooted in childhood wounds of not feeling abandoned or not feeling loved, not feeling safe, because in my home nothing was safe. I didn't know what was going to happen, right? So those things made me feel safe. That hit, whatever it was for me, that hit of brain chemicals, that comfort from the food really gave me those things that I was lacking. So yeah, definitely.
Okay. Actually, that's a great place to pause and take a break. When we get back, we'll talk about more of the eating disorders and stuff like that. Jumping back into our topic, let's talk about disordered eating versus eating disorder. Is there a difference? And if so, what is the difference?
Yeah, for me, there's quite a bit of difference. Disordered eating is characterized by abnormal eating, but it doesn't actually fit the diagnostic criteria to be an eating disorder.
Mhm.
So the DSM, Diagnostic Statistical Manual, right?
Yes.
Right. So it doesn't really fit that diagnosis. However, it's when people eat for reasons other than nourishing themselves, and because of hunger. So these people might, like I said, skip meals. They might cut out entire food groups. They may, stress eat. They may emotionally eat. They may, in terms of like another behavior could be, obsessively reading labels when they go shopping, right? For clean foods, clean eating. So I put it in quotes there because, people go on those kicks of clean eating. But in terms of eating disorders, though, these people are so obsessed with thoughts of food and body and weight changes that it interferes with their daily life. It doesn't allow them to be able to concentrate. And I know for me, it affected my daily life. I suffered with anorexia and bulimia for many years. Excuse me. And it was just this, this obsession, this absolute obsession with my body, with food, with what I was taking in. I couldn't think of anything else. Like I was thinking of that nonstop. It was almost the only thing on my mind. So that's a huge difference,
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. I agree with the disordered eating. I'd even label that as like when you eliminate food groups, or it's like, oh, I won't eat that food anymore because I associate that with the weight gain or something along those lines. I see more disordered eating than I see eating disorders myself. But I agree that there was, a time in my life that it was like, okay, 500 calories and we'll be good for the day, right? We'll survive the day with 500 calories and let's excessively exercise and do things like that. It was a very short period of my life. I think I came to pretty fast in that angle, but emotional, so disordered eating versus an eating disorder. An eating disorder, it's very consuming. Like your life is almost dictated by that. Whereas it's a disordered eating is a little bit less. It can get to that extreme. Now we have so many different eating disorders, like, right? There's like exercise eating disorder, and there's I can't think of the name of it now, but it's like, they're so perfect in their food. It has to be organic. It has to be clean. Yeah. I was like, crazy. It's crazy. Like, I'm like, whew, man, I'm tired just thinking how much you got to go grocery shopping and things, right? Like, so, but anyways, it's one of those, like, I'd say that's really the biggest difference between the two of them. But eating disorders themselves, I feel like they take everything. Every thought goes through the eating disorder. Like, is my job going to be able to keep me on this eating disorder? Somebody finds out that I have this eating disorder while I'm at work. Do I have to change jobs? It's not a rational thought process to get rid of the eating disorder. It's, what do I have to do to avoid to be able to keep my life the way that it is?
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great insight.
Really, it really is. Like, I did work with a woman who, a young woman who was diagnosed with anorexia when she was like 12 and hospitalized for this. And she didn't really get a lot of help for the mental and emotional aspects that went along with it, any kind of the underlying stuff and the trauma and whatnot. So I worked with her, and she said, you're the only person who looked at the eating disorder as a symptom of what was really going on underneath. And she said, now I'm able to make goals in my life that don't revolve around food and exercise and my body, because it was all consuming, absolutely consuming this young woman. So she's moved on from that. I'm so happy for her.
Yeah.
huge transformation.
So I have a question. A few years ago, I decided to do like a no sugar, no grains diet, and I actually lost a lot of weight, and I started to look pretty incredible. And I was exercising. But would that be considered a disordered eating? Because I cut out like grains and sugar?
I'm going to say maybe it could be, but I think to me it just sounds like an extreme dieting, because it was a period of time and it ended. It didn't consume you. I think there's a certain amount of time you have to have a disordered eating to be classified that you have it. For you, it's like an extreme diet. I'm getting a massive results. I don't want to end it because of this. And then, it could have been like you eventually had the grain or had the sugar again, and your body remembered how good it was. And then all those processes came back. Because you didn't change your pattern, you didn't change the underlying belief. Instead, you changed the diet.
Okay.
So,
dieting itself can create disordered eating and eating disorders. So, I'd be careful there. There's a lot of diets or lifestyles, people call them, like keto and paleo and all of those things that, I've seen women like losing their hair because of the keto diet.
Oh,
like
wow.
it's not healthy to cut out food groups for a long period of time. And in terms of feeling obsessed about, the macros and the calories and the percentage of fat, etc., that's in their diet, that can really, you got to watch it there, because it can really create some kind of disordered eating pattern, which could turn into an eating disorder after time. All those diets are really, dangerous, and they never work in the long term, actually. That's one of the things that with dieting, I mean, I've been on every diet. I mean, I've been on the cabbage soup diet. I've been on like the baked potato diet. I've been on like the grapefruit diet, every diet, known. Even like starting as a preteen, and inevitably, like, I'd be on this diet for a couple of weeks and I lose a bit of weight. And then inevitably, how much grapefruit can you actually eat, right? Like, how much can you actually eat cabbage soup every day, all day? And so it just really sets us up for failure. And every time we do diet and we weight cycle, it's just bad for our health, and lose more muscle. And so we gain back more fat. It's called fat overshooting. So after we get off the diet and we gain weight, it's mostly, it's not lean muscle mass for the most part that we're gaining. It's more fat, because our body is trying to protect ourselves from that like famine that we're putting ourselves through.
So what are some signs that someone should look for that they should speak to someone about a possible eating disorder. I mean, we all want to kind of work on eating healthier, having a better relationship with food, but at what point should someone go, "Hey, okay, so something's wrong. I need to go
Yeah,
talk to someone."
I need help. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a ton, but towards the clients that, frequent towards my direction, a lot of them have more of an exercise disorder. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like they're in their exercise and they're already planning their next exercise and planning what
Mm-hmm.
is going to happen and planning their, exactly the diet. And if they screw up or they mess up or they miss the workout or they miss the perfect diet, it's a punishment. It's like your thought process. And it is also for other eating disorders, just like anorexia or bulimia or any of that. It's like, if I do it, I immediately know, okay, I'm going to be vomiting this up, or it's okay that I eat this because it's okay, I'm going to go to the bathroom and get rid of it. Or if it's anorexia, it's like, how many times can I push my food around on my plate before so people think I ate before they have to see that? Or, frequent trips to the bathroom, things like that after eating, all those kinds of signs. I would say even before that, you could get a sign that you need to go. But the number one thing that I think for a person to admit it has to be that they actually have that, like, wow, that's probably not a rational thought. And that may be harder, but other people could pick up on, like, you've been like exercising 4 times a day now for 2 hours each time. That's like 8 hours. Like, that's your job, right? Or, I've noticed that you go to the bathroom every time that you're done eating, or things like that, and maybe even pick up on it sooner than that. When I was in college and I kind of went through mine, one of my roommates actually picked up on it. She was like, "You normally snack with us at night and you don't do that anymore. You drink a diet soda." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm just not hungry." And then, like, 2 days later, when it was like my absolute favorite food and I didn't eat it, she was like, "Okay, I get it. You're definitely restricting yourself." And she kind of called me out on it. And I think that was helpful. So picking up on just routine patterns with your friends and things like that could be helpful as well.
Yeah, I think the exercise component is a really huge component. I know for me that I had an exercise bulimia, I would say, right, to burn off the calories that I was eating. Some of the other things, that I've picked up on, and that I see with people who have eating disorders, is just that, telltale signs: extreme variation in weight, right? Real obsession with the body, real obsession with the foods, picking up their foods on their plate or separating them, purging behaviors, running to the bathroom, but also things like cooking. I know when I was suffering with anorexia, when I was a teenager, I would bake and bake and bake, and I would bake so many cookies and loaf cakes and all kinds of things, and I cook all the time, but I would refuse to eat it. I would just refuse to eat it. So that's another thing too. And making excuses not to eat. Well, no, I'm not hungry, going out, but also avoiding situations, like avoiding sort of shutting themselves away and avoiding social situations, or avoiding certain friends, or avoiding certain groups of people, or not doing things that they used to do because they don't want to have to explain why they're not eating, or explain any of their behaviors around food.
Yeah, 100% agree. Totally.
I'm probably good. When I'm working out, I'm thinking of like being done. I'm not planning the next one. I'm like, nope.
That's funny. I did have exercise disorder for a little while, so I totally understand what it feels like. It's like, okay, well, it's okay. If this workout didn't go well, I'll be back here in like 8 hours. Like, I remember how that was a rational thought in my head. I don't know, but now I'm like, man, it was so not rational.
So my exercise routine, or like my active routine, is get to the gym, walk 50 minutes. I like up the incline because I want to make sure I'm keep progressing, like stuff, watching my burn, like the suggested burn. I'm not sure if it's even real. I hope I'm burning that many calories. I'm just like, hey, like It says I am, so why not? But like being done is like the goal. Like, hey, I got this in today. I'm gonna like, and then I guess the next thought is like, I have all these other schools I have to go to, so I'm gonna get some more steps in. It's gonna be a really good day, and I'll be back tomorrow. Or if I reach my third day, because I was like, I need at least 3 days. Sometimes I try to talk myself into a fourth day, but usually by the third day, I'm like, back next week. Like, so it really depends.
A lot of people, I don't even say exercise to, because a lot of people have really bad connotations or bad memories of exercise.
Yeah.
I mean, so I talk to them about joyful movement. And I do movement with them. I'm actually a trauma sensitive yoga teacher, so I do some yoga with them. It's really the goal is to feel good in their bodies and doing something that brings them joy, whether it's dancing or walking with a friend or whatever it is that they like to do. Just moving joyfully.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah, I always say that, there's no reason you don't have to go to the gym and be stout. You don't have to do deadlifts. If you want to dance with your kids for 30 minutes every day, you go do it. Just go do it.
Yeah.
So
I have noticed that people have really negative reactions when I say, yeah, I'm going to go work out. Like, but for me, I enjoy it. Like, it's not like, oh, I got to do this because I'm like, no, I want to go do there. I want to shut this brain off and just kind of do something physical, get it all out. So,
Okay. I really like joyful movement.
But yeah,
I actually don't like yoga. Like, yoga is not something I enjoy, but when I was younger, it was something I enjoyed. So I'm not sure when that switched for me. Like, when I was younger, like in 4th, 5th grade, I remember liking yoga. And then as an adult, I'm like, no. I tried it with my roommate the other day and I was like, you continue. Like, this is working for you. Like, you do that. I'm going to go walk on that treadmill. Like,
Yeah. I think there's a lot of cultural stereotypes and societal stereotypes and lots of orthorexic. I hate saying this because I'm part of the yoga community, but there's a lot of that kind of stuff in the yoga community. So I don't think it's necessarily as healthy as it as it presents itself to be. So, and of course, I mean, you don't have to like yoga, whatever really feels good in your body, right? Get out and do it and just enjoy it. Just live joyfully. Yeah.
Okay, so the last thing we're going to talk about today is I want to go over some healthy ways that people can work on emotional eating or binge eating, like steps they can take to try and get over these things. Get over sounds too harsh, but you know what I mean. Work through, manage.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I would say is get help, whether that's with a coach or a counselor or your doctor or something like that. And the reason why is because that pattern that I've talked about a couple of times, your pattern is stronger than you know. And all of a sudden it'll be weeks later and you'll be like, oh my God, I'm back here again. How did I get back here again? Because your mind protects you. And in some weird way, whatever it is you're doing, your mind feels that what it's doing that's harmful to you is actually protecting you. It's actually helping you. So even though it may not be helpful to you, your brain, your body feels like it is. So the first thing I suggest is to just have somebody that has some sort of degree or counseling or some sort of, not like your best friend. And that's not to be mean at anything, but your best friend isn't like, you're totally okay with your best friend coming to you and saying something rude to you and you being mean because you expect her to come back to be friends again, right? Like that, while I'm saying that's a good relationship to have somebody like know what's going on, having somebody else that can physically, mentally help you through it, I think is number one. And that's just, as you recognize it or as people call it out on you and you feel comfortable, getting that help is literally going to be the game changer for you. And then, if let's say, people are like, well, I don't know that I want to go that route yet. Like, go to something that's really simple and easy. You know, I'm not saying you got to go spend your life savings right away or anything. You know, go to your doctor, tell your doctor I'm sure has some resources for you, right? And then go from there and build from there. Or, you know, cyber stalk people like Stephenie and myself and other people, right? And be like, okay, who are these people? Let's find out what they're talking about, get comfortable, kind of get some tips, and maybe put some of those systems in place. And as you see that, like, you've fallen a little bit, that may be like the kicker. Okay, now is the time that I need to get the help. Like, I'm not changing anything. And then I would say, to change anything is that you have to be willing. So ask yourself as well, like, am I actually willing to change this? Is this something I'm willing to change? Do I accept that I'm ready to change? Or is it just that, you know, someone else is pushing me into the change? You know, we cannot force anyone to change, even if they're like your husband or your brother or your sister. You know, you can talk to them all you want, but since you can't force them to change, you know, ask yourself, am I ready? Is this the time? Am I gonna take it serious this time? And am I willing to take my, you know, health to a better level?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Getting help is paramount, and some people don't even know they need help, right? But if you're out there and you recognize that you do, reaching out to someone out there, even in a small way, even for a conversation, is good. In terms of just like tips people can take away from this, I mean, really we want to cover those 4 bases again. So number one, you know, making sure that you're eating enough during the day, making sure you're getting enough carbohydrates, fats, proteins during the day, so you're not so hungry at night that you know that you're ending up eating large quantities of food because you're just so ravenously hungry. You know, number 2, changing or trying to change that all or nothing thinking, getting a little bit experimental maybe with foods, trying different foods, seeing how they make you feel, focusing more on that. And you know, making sure that your self-care is good. So really make sure that you're getting enough sleep, you're getting enough rest, that you're looking after the stress in a way that's healthy, and learning to, and this is a hard part too, because excuse me, if someone's been traumatized, it's very difficult to sit with emotions. Right. So I would not say that. I would say if you've had trauma in the past, to reach out to someone definitely for help in this area. But in terms of emotions, you know, learning to sit with them and to process them in a healthy way. And I love intuitive eating. I think it's fantastically transformational, but you know, along with some of the techniques and body-based somatic, you know, kind of work that I do, it really just adds a whole other level to that, where it's really easier to change those patterns and to process emotions and things that have happened in our lives to create that relationship. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you both for coming on our podcast and talking with us today. If people wanted to get in contact with you, how would they do that? How could they do that?
So for me, they can contact me through Instagram. My handle is at your coach Stephenie, and that's STEPHENIE. They can also contact me on my website at Stephenie, STEPHENIE, Farrell, FARRELL.com. And yeah, just best way to contact me.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I'm Leslie Urbas, and they can contact me at leslieUrbas.com. Last name is spelled URBAS. Or I have a Facebook group called Weight Loss and Wellbeing for High Performers, and they can jump on into that free group at any point. I go live in there once a week to talk about things, and because of this podcast this week, I'm talking about if your diet's right for you and the tips on that. So feel free to jump in.
Awesome. So of course, as always, all of that information will be in our show description, show notes, so that you can check it out and link directly to our guest today. Are there any projects that you guys are working on that you guys wanted to like shout out really quick and let everyone know about?
Yeah, I actually just launched a, excuse me, an 8-week program. It's a group program for women because I work specifically with women. Group program for women called Power Up and Trust Your Body. So it's specifically for binge and emotional eating, healing those two things. And it's available right now at a low cost. So if people are interested, I urge them to reach out to me, DM me on Instagram, or send me a note from my contact tab on my website. And yeah, it's really, I think some of the tips that I gave you today, people can go and implement. But I know, I really know that working with me, either one-on-one or in a group, can really, really be a game changer and transform your life. So I would love to hear some people asking me more about that.
I have a group program that'll start towards the end of December, but I will have, I'm going to be launching the group program with a free 5-day training towards the end of December, beginning of January. So that way it will all be on really changing your patterns, changing your habits, and actually making, your New Year's resolution stick this year.
Nice.
Cool. And finally, guys, would you be willing to share a message from your heart about anything at all that you just want people to know?
Yeah, actually, we talk about our why in coaching or in business or in whatever we do in our lives. Why do we do what we do? And my why is actually my story. So it's, I've been exactly where some of your listeners are now. I ate food when no one's watching. I exercise like a demon. I demonized my sweet tooth, and I ate candy bars out of the trash during a binge. So I think that no matter how desperate people feel their cases, it is possible to tune in to their bodies, to trust their body, to know what it needs, and to do that healing work, because I've done it myself. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I would say mine's not so much of a nice healing message like that, but I always say something like, at the end, I typically say, you can be free. You can drink the margarita without shame or guilt and have the abs you want and feel comfortable in your body without one bit of guilt, if that's what you want. It's just coming to that peace within yourself and realizing that food is there for you, yes, but the ending part of it, where it's like, oh, now I have to go punish myself, can be released. So release what weighs you down and enjoy everything that you eat in your day.
Awesome.
And feel hot and sexy in your body.
All right. Well, thank you again, both of you guys, for joining us today and talking with us about this subject. I hope people message you guys. I hope people listen to today and seek the help that they need, and that we transform lives. Today's life lesson is, it's important to share your story. Dr. Brené Brown encourages us to share our stories with people who have earned the right to hear them. Spider Robertson once said, shared pain is lessened, shared joy increased. When we feel safe to share our pain, share our stories with others, we may create a sense of freedom for ourselves while developing a joyous connection. And that is today's life lesson.